No, but some business sense, like how to do your taxes would have been nice. But
Facts.
yeah.
Well, we good?
Yeah, let's go.
Everything's set up.
Yep,
Everything's recording.
we're good.
We're live.
All right. Welcome back to the Creatives POV podcast. I'm Noah.
I'm Ethan.
I'm Marquis.
And today we got the man, Bruce Bales, on the podcast. Bruce is a really talented cinematographer, originally from the Quad Cities area, and now he's in Des Moines. And so, let's get into it. Bruce, tell us a little bit about yourself and where you're from and what you do.
Yeah, like you said, I grew up in the Quad Cities, Bednorf specifically. Really liked growing up there. It was a really unique upbringing, both like small town vibe and big city vibes, just because like 4 cities together, 2 in Iowa and 2 in Illinois, was like a pretty large playground. So, and there's like a decent public transportation system that could take you from Iowa to Illinois, like on the bus for like 65 cents. So my friends and I did a lot of exploring there, which was really cool.
Yeah.
And education there at Bednorf High School is really great too. I'm super blessed to have gotten such a great education there. So super happy I grew up in the Quad Cities. But yeah, I've been in Des Moines for 10 years. I'm a cinematographer, filmmaker. I also am a film producer. So on the indie level, nothing big.
Yeah.
Just help my friends make their movies and help get my movies off the ground. And I own Def Productions, which we specialize now in just like narrative films and short documentaries. But got our start with music videos and corporate videos and event recaps and all that kind of stuff.
Nice.
Yeah.
Cool. So you've been doing this for 10 years, you said?
I moved to Des Moines 10 years ago this year, yeah. And I started my business right before I moved to Des Moines. But I've been doing this like on and off my whole life pretty much. I mean, I started making images in high school by making skate videos with my friends. I'm a rollerblader.
Nice.
So I've made like...
Down on the riverfront.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the skate park. And we helped to get Bednorf Skate Park built. Like my friend Dan filed a petition. We got it signed. And so skating was a big part of my life. Middle school, high school, college. Made over like 15 skate videos with my friends. And the whole time I was interested in cinematography and just like learning how to make images. But in high school, I think what really piqued my interest was still 35 millimeter photography and developing my own, because my high school had a dark room. And the first time I, turned the light on to expose an image and put that piece of paper in the developer and saw it appear before my eyes, it was, a memorable experience. And I was like pretty hooked on that for a while.
Yeah.
Focused on that a lot in high school, and didn't do well in my art classes because when I was supposed to be drawing, I was in the dark room, but
Yeah.
squeaked by.
Okay.
What year did you graduate high school then?
2004.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of anyone like, do you know Max Grega?
Name sounds familiar.
He's a cinematographer in Bettendorf.
Yeah,
So-
I think my friend Corey has worked with him. Corey Ruby, he does like special effects makeup.
Okay, cool.
But yeah, name sounds familiar.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Dope. Are you self-taught then, or did you go to college eventually for like film?
I didn't study film in college. I looked at some art schools during high school, but I wasn't really keen on the film school thing. It's not because I didn't believe in it. It was just like I didn't really know anybody that went to film school, and I didn't really know that, film was an option as a career and as a career path, to be completely honest. I was thinking more along the lines of like art school, like still photography, fine art photography, something like that. But cinematography wasn't something that I thought about as a career until much later. So I studied English literature in college, which, I laugh about sometimes, but it's actually come in handy. Like it's helped me be a storyteller and understand story structure, and helped me to read a lot and get exposed to a lot of stories. And then I couldn't find a job because it was like 2008, economy was bad or whatever. So I took some time off, worked a couple jobs, and then went to grad school because I thought I was going to be a teacher, which I still may someday, but got a master's in education. But during that time, I did an internship with a group in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, which was where I was going to school, that specialized in music videos. So I was on the weekends and in my free time, I was helping them light music videos or, being a second camera for them. I learned so much from them. So much. I'm really indebted to those guys for giving me a chance, because they kind of saw me as this like young kid that didn't know much and wanted me to learn some stuff.
That's cool.
Yeah.
What was the first project that you were ever a part of in the film industry?
First project I was a part of in the film industry was a student film my friend Barry Bogovich made on 35 millimeter film at our school, Robert Morris University, called The Brotherhood, and I was actually an actor in it, and then an assistant camera when I wasn't on screen, and I learned so much from that. Film was, amazing to me. It was just like so magical to see the process and just to be around that equipment. And I kind of got to sit back and watch because I was an actor, so I wasn't like having to work the whole time. And I think that is another moment in my life where I really caught this bug, this filmmaking bug, and just, completely enthralled with the process.
Do you still do some acting to this day, or you're like behind the camera fully?
I'm not against it. I always tell my friends, like, write a script for me. I'd love to act. I think acting is something that all filmmakers should do because it helps you understand the pressure that's on actors, the complexities of being a film actor. It helps you to be a better storyteller. So it's something I'm definitely open to. And I think specifically directors should do some acting or take acting classes so they can understand how actors think, because as a filmmaker, that's really important. As a cinematographer, I'm often like the closest person to an actor. And sometimes I can sneak in like little notes or like little tidbits, or I might pick up on something. I think it's important for me to understand acting to be a good cinematographer.
Mm-hmm. What are some recent projects that you're working on right now?
Oh man, it's so the last 2 years have been pretty wild. My crew and I have really like put our, everything we had into our work. I think probably a byproduct of the pandemic and being kind of cooped up and wanting to have an outlet. And I think we all kind of got ourselves involved in a lot of projects. So in the last 2 years, I've shot 3 feature-length films, one of which we just dropped the trailer for, titled Knee High. That's a project that's really near and dear to me, that we spent 3.5 weeks last year making. This small, tight-knit crew, small budget, and what we were able to accomplish there, I'm really proud of. And wrapping up some post-production work on a web series called Friendly Faces, which is about 2 guys that are like 4 hire friends. So each episode is pretty quirky and wild, and they like go and be someone's best friend for a day. And that was a lot of fun to work on with several different directors, all self-funded by an amazing human named Keaton Fuller out of Cedar Rapids. And then we just wrapped up a short film that I wrote and was the director of photography on, called Thick as Thieves, that my friend Spencer Smith directed. And it's a short coming-of-age tale, loosely based on some things that I went through as a kid.
Dope.
Yeah, with an older friend of mine. Yeah. So a lot of stuff. Always try to have a couple, irons in the fire, as they say.
Do you ever have you ever like submitted any of these films into like competitions or like what are they
Festivals,
called?
like film festivals?
Yeah.
We submit most of our films to film festivals. Not many competitions, because there's like sometimes the competitions you got to really dig deep to make sure they're not just fraudulent money-making ventures, to be honest. And the same with film festivals. You got to really make sure they're legit and that they're worth your time, and like more so that you can go there and like network. So film festivals are a great tool to get build your community and to get more eyes on your film and to meet people. So I try to do those as often as I can, but lately, unfortunately, I've been so busy I haven't been able to attend a lot of them. But the real like gold in film festivals is going there and representing your film and meeting people. That's like it's like some of the best networking you can do, because you have something that people are there to see. You can talk about it. So it really is a great conversation starter.
Are a lot of these in Iowa that you submit to, or do you submit to like film festivals around like the Midwest or like the coast?
Yeah, we try to start regionally to start. So a lot of them are in Iowa, Illinois, Missouri, Nebraska, Minnesota, Kansas. But we've been trying to, as you make more films, you try to branch out farther and farther and build your community and build your audience a little bit more. It proves to be more difficult, like every step you take to get into those larger film festivals, because it really becomes like more about who you know and who knows you, and that's just the way it is, or at least the way it seems. Don't quote me on that. But really, I'm just focused on telling more like stories in a better way and in a more engaging way, and and hoping that, that does all the work for me really. But
Yeah.
I think it's best to start locally, to build your community and build your audience. And there's a lot of really great film festivals in Iowa. There's one that's taking place right now called Snake Alley in Burlington, and that's one of my favorites. And I've met a lot of really great people and collaborators there. So those events are pretty fun to go to.
Yeah.
Is there one project that you're like just super proud of?
Yeah, I would say Knee High is the one that I'm really proud of at this moment, because what we were able to do is, with the budget we had and what we're able to put on screen, they're two totally different things. I think it feels like a much bigger movie than it was, and we got such great performances and such great light from Mother Nature, and we kind of tailored a lot of our production around those really beautiful times of day: golden hour, blue hour, sunrise, sunset, and we were prepared, but then we got lucky too. And so like the results from that, when those two things come together, like we got some pretty special things, I think. So, and it's a story that's set in Iowa. It's a story about family. Those are the kind of stories I really want to tell. So it's near and dear to my heart. And we actually shot a short film version of this like world, not the same story, 5 years ago, and it was pretty successful. One of our most successful short films as a group. So this feature film, for it to like actually be real 5 years later, is kind of unreal.
What is the process like of taking something to a feature length and not just a short story?
Well, it's a lot harder. Not to sugarcoat it, it's really difficult. It's grueling. You might spend 2 years of your lives working on this one project. I started talking to Marissa Vaughn, the director, about the feature film Knee High 5 years ago, and then we kind of didn't talk about it for a couple of years and started talking about it about a year and a half ago. We just finished it. Like, it's done. The sound design and final score is going in this week. Color correction's done. So it feels good to like wrap it up within like an 18-month span, but sometimes people will spend like, even 5 years working on this one feature. So I think the best thing you can do is mentally prepare yourself for that, and like really know that it's going to be a long haul, and that you need to conserve your mental and physical energy in a way that it might not be apparent to you like right away, but 16 days of filming like is hard on anybody, especially because you're doing 10 to 14 hours a day usually. So being mentally and physically prepared is something that, like, it seems so simple, but that's something that I really take into account to make sure I'm ready, give myself ample preparation time and rest time. But really it's like, also you got to enjoy the process, and you got to like know that it's going to be hard, but the reward at the end of it, so you made a film, which is kind of a miracle anytime that happens. I think it's a miracle anytime a shot gets taken. Like we got a good shot. The sound was good.
Yeah.
The actors did a good job. It was in focus. Like, that's a miracle almost. Instead, like a film is just a bunch of like tiny miracles.
That's so good. But tell us a little bit about your experience of being like a cinematographer on those kinds of sets, because a lot of it is collaboration. You have such a vast team and so many different talents. Your job specifically being the cinematographer. What's that like?
Yeah, so my job starts well before we get on set. So how it starts in pre-production is just like with conversations with the director, a lot of conversation with the director. Just to use Knee High as an example, Marissa and I probably talk like once or twice a week for a couple months to build our shot list together, to talk about script changes, to do location scouts. So we wanted to make sure that we kind of knew every scene in and out as much as we possibly could, which is how I like to work, because I like surprises, but I also kind of like to have a plan and then be ready to pivot for a surprise, because I just think that you get rewarded a little bit more when you have that plan. So my job starts then, and that you build the look of the film with the director and with the other departments. So work with wardrobe, work with the production designer, and kind of ask them what they're kind of feeling for scenes and for the overall look of the movie, and, give your input on wardrobe and color choice, color palette, because that all kind of affects what I do. And just also to make sure that the wardrobe works on camera, because sometimes they might have a really cool piece of clothing that just doesn't work for either sound or video, and you kind of have to pivot and be like, yeah, can we try something else? So basically, like, the first phase is trying to figure out, like, anything that could go wrong and try to have an answer for it. As a cinematographer, and working with all those departments to kind of make sure everything's really tight and cohesive. And then the second part is when we're on set. I mean, really a lot of it starts with helping with the schedule and like really figuring out how we're going to film everything, and like when we can be outside, when we should be inside, when the good light is happening, what kind of light we want, and working with the assistant director and the director to kind of lay that out. And that's fun, but also really exhausting. So getting that done ahead of time, and then, making sure that you make your day and don't slow everything down. I mean, really, like, usually lighting is the thing that takes the most time, and just making sure that you're like, what you want and know what you're doing. And so you're not sitting there just messing around and wasting everybody's time all the time, So, and then the end portion, like post-production, meeting with the editor or editing myself, which I do quite often. Watching cuts, giving notes, and then working with a colorist to finalize the color correction of a film. So those are kind of the main portions, but it also comes down like you're a department leader. You're one of the leaders. If you're the director of photography, director's in your name. So, you're one of the higher ups on set. So just like communicating well and treating people with respect and being calm and cool and collected, and, being there for the story and just trying to be open to what's best for that.
What is your favorite part of the process? Like, is it the pre-production or like being on set, or is it like post-production?
It's definitely being on set. I think that's where there's so many like magical moments of filmmaking, but I think on set is where you get to see the most of them and where you really get to feel them. And when you get one of those moments, like when an actor really nails the take, like can give you goosebumps that can make the hair on the back of your neck stand up, and it also makes you really happy because you're kind of validated in that moment that what you're doing is working, and that it's right, because it's really a feeling. Like you can't really explain it, you just like know. And that portion of the magic, the movie magic, is something that's always appealed to me. But also just the camaraderie of the crew and the cast is something that's so amazing. You like gain a new family every time you make a project. So there's something about being with people and sharing that experience and gaining, growing together and learning together that is super near and dear to my heart.
Cool. Well, for our followers and listeners, could you kind of explain what's the difference between a videographer and a cinematographer?
Yeah, I saw this question. I was like, oh man, semantics. I don't know that I'm the right person to tell you what the difference is, but I'll tell you that it doesn't really matter what your title is or like what the label is. It's like up to you what your label is, and up to you what you call yourself. And you don't need anybody's permission to be a cinematographer as opposed to a videographer. And there's nothing wrong with being a videographer or a cinematographer. So I would say for me though, like the difference is that a cinematographer like does more lighting and works with like a larger team. That's what I would say. A cinematographer might do stuff that a videographer do, and a videographer might do stuff that a cinematographer do, but they're kind of interchangeable to me a little bit. But I think it's really the team aspect that I feel like a large team cinematographer versus a videographer who might be more independent or, just a solo filmer. But I mean, I see people do great things many different ways by themselves or with 500 people. I don't like the 500 people thing personally. I like it, smaller too. So, because that's where my roots are, like being a videographer, like going out with one or two lights and the sound kit and my camera by myself, and trying to tell a story. So, I mean, you learn a lot that way really quickly.
Do you have any aspirations of like working with a bigger team at some point, even though you're kind of a smaller team guy?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, for me, it's like so much about the vibe too. Like I just want an atmosphere where people can feel comfortable and not feel overwhelmed. And I don't know that the stories I want to tell are going to be ones that need really big crews, like massive crews, like over 50 people. But I'll tell you what, like the more I do this, the more I understand why there's so many people involved, because I do my best work when I can think about one thing. Instead of like 10 things. And I think everyone's that way. And it takes a while, I think, to get specialized like that, for everybody to be so specialized where they can just think about that one thing, because I think that it's like an intrinsic human nature to want to help the overall problems and like any problems, but to get people to just think about like one thing and to think about it, like to be the best at thinking about that one thing. I mean, that would be really cool to be a part of, where you have like 40 people who all are like the best in their field, experts, you know, because the cool thing about film is that it's all art forms. Like anybody can work in film. Like you can be a carpenter and you can work in film. You can be a painter, you can be a caterer, you can be a driver. Like it's not all just like these highly like creative things. There's like room for everyone in film. And that's why I would love to see the state embrace film more and like really, you know, give it a chance. But, you know,
I thought of another question earlier. So you said sometimes when it comes to these like feature length films, like it takes a few years to like flesh out that idea and capture it and like create it. So how do you go about balancing working on multiple projects in like a couple of years, you know?
Yeah, that balance of time and time management's really tough, and it's something that, you know, as a self-employed small business owner, it took me a while to get, and the regimented sort of feel to filmmaking can take some people a while to get used to and to be comfortable with. But time management is like super important when I think you're a creative, and there's all these like myths out there about being an artist and about being creative that like you shouldn't be good at these things, or like you should just be like, you have to be good at these things. Like you have to be a business person to be an artist today. Like you just have to be. So I really try to take a more business minded approach to a lot of the work I do. And like, I have a schedule, I have a calendar that's like, this is what I'm doing for these couple hours a day. So I try to just really remain like as organized as I can and provide myself time to think about these things, because sometimes I just need to like block out time just to think, and not even necessarily to do any work, but just to, you know, let something marinate, a script or an idea. So yeah, it's tough though. Time management is, you know, something that I'm always trying to get better at, but I think that's ultimately like how I balance things, is just, you know, try to prepare even weeks ahead of time. Be like, I know 3 weeks from now, I'm going to need a day to think about this project because I'm going to be working on it, you know, 3.5 weeks from now. So just trying to give myself that time to be able to like let ideas really come to fruition.
What is it like for like funding your projects? Like, do you have investors that help fund these, or is it kind of just like you and your crew just because you love doing what you do, you're putting your own money into it?
Yeah, it's more of that. We haven't really got the project yet to go after investors personally, like, or I haven't, that I felt comfortable going after that big money. A lot of it is we're passionate about making films. I think we're all still learning, and we use like these short films that we make specifically as sort of like our film school. Like, hey, what are you guys doing this weekend? You know, what are you guys doing 6 weeks from now and this weekend? Do you guys want to make a film? And people are like, yeah, they're usually pretty excited about it, especially if it's like 2 or 3 days and it's not like, we're not going to work 12-hour days. We're going to work like 8 hours, you know, and really keep it more chill and relaxed. So that's one way we do our short films, is just like by getting people that are passionate about it and all agree to like work basically for lunch or dinner. Which, you know, I think will get old eventually. Like we'll want to pay people and really take care of them. And, you know, we value their time already. It's not that we don't, just that I've always looked at it as like a learning experience. Like I didn't go to film school, so these short films are kind of my film school. As far as like the bigger projects, the feature length projects, those take money. Knee High was largely self-funded. We did some crowdfunding. There was a couple small investors. So a lot of the time at the indie level, it's kind of like a amalgamation of a lot of different, you know, sources of funding. So that's kind of how most of those projects get off the jump, is just like someone has $10,000 that they want to put into a project, and then a friend has 5,000 and they apply for a grant for 15, and then they do a crowdfunding for 20, you know, and you kind of piece it together that way. There's a great program that the state has called the Greenlight Grants, which you can get up to $50,000 to make a project. And I've been fortunate enough to be a part of several of those, which is like probably one of the easiest ways to get funding in Iowa, and a way to like one of the easiest ways to really level up your film is to apply for a Greenlight Grant and use that state funds to make something really great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Within the film industry, whether it's director or cinematographer, even like effects or producers, what kind of style or what just like creatives like influence you personally, your work, and like the projects that you want to future create?
Yeah, that's a great question. And like there's like a non-answer to that question and then a real answer. The non-answer is that like my influences change with every single project. So I try to listen to what a project needs and like what it tells me. And I try to be a really intuitive person. I try to let my intuition like really guide me as far as what decisions to make, and take a poetic approach as far as like thinking about what a shot says to my audience, how it will make them feel, how the actor's feeling, how the character's feeling. So a lot of the times my inspiration is like unique to a project, but as far as overall inspirations, I mean, I'm inspired by my friends, like mostly my friends that make films. I've been really lucky to meet a lot of people who work in the industry, a lot of Iowans when I first moved to Des Moines that migrated to LA, and they're all like crushing it out there. So anytime I see one of their projects, it's incredibly motivating to me, and it like kind of makes me get up off my chair like almost every time and like do something, write something, or make a photograph or whatever it is. But in the greater industry, I mean, there's so many people to be inspired by, but like I really like some of the old school cinematographers, like a guy named Gordon Willis, who did this movie. He did the Godfather trilogy, so everyone knows him for that. But he did this movie, All the President's Men, which is about the Watergate scandal. And like, I watched that movie and I was like, oh my God, I didn't know people lit movies this way. Like, it's so dark and so atmospheric. And never forget the first time I saw that movie. Conrad Hall is someone who, like, old school cinematographer also. Francis Ford Coppola, The Conversation is one of my favorite films. But I also like modern cinematographers, like Caitlin Azramendi, who did some of season 4 Secession, and she did this, some amazing indie projects, and this Valvoline commercial that's like forever burnt in my head. Like, I know it sounds weird, but I just never seen a commercial like what she was able to do. And then Chloe Zhao, who made Nomadland, and The Writer, and then, there's so many modern cinematographers to be inspired by. It's like almost useless for me to like list them, because it's like right now I feel like we're in like the golden age of cinematography in a way where like people are just like pushing the boundaries so far and like doing things that I'm like, how did you even, I'll see things and I'm like, how did you do, I have to like spend days figuring out how they did this, like I think of like that one Kendrick Lamar music video when he's like under the bridge and the camera's moving like really quick, and when it first happened, everyone was like, how did they do this? Not knowing they had the Cine robot doing it, which that thing is incredible. Absolutely incredible. So like there's all these tools now too that like, I mean, inspiration's everywhere, like as far as like cinematography goes, but from an outside perspective too, I like paintings a lot. I mean, like Edward Hopper, specifically like atmospheric paintings, realism. So those also inspire me a lot.
We had one of my friends, his name is Alex Barnes, on the podcast a few episodes ago, and he goes to film school at Arizona State. I don't know if you got a chance to watch that one, but
I listened to some of it, yeah.
Yeah,
Not all of it.
he was bringing up paintings as a big inspiration for him too, because like he was saying how a lot of like filmmakers will literally recreate paintings and stuff, like just, in a video format. So it's kind of cool.
Painters are the best at lighting. And it's not that you don't think of it as lighting, but their shading and their use of contrast and shadows and light is like really, that it's easy to be inspired by that, because we're really painting with light. That's what cinematography is. Especially like when you're talking about celluloid, you're like painting with light on this negative. So I think it makes sense to be inspired by painters, and specifically like for me, Edward Hopper, and then Rembrandt. Rembrandt specifically for just style of lighting that, he did in his portrait work that, I think is one of the most pleasing ways to light a human face. And if you just look at paintings, like, you can't help but just get ideas about lighting for cinematography. And that's like specifically for me, the thing that will keep me interested in this forever and ever is lighting. Cause like truly is like painting, and you can be so specialized and so like, just down to the last minuscule little inch of light. And to me, that's something that will keep me interested forever.
What can we do better with our lighting setup right now?
Oh man, I don't know. I got to see the final product.
Be gentle.
I got to see the final product, but I mean, not everything has to be, 12 lights, a bunch of negative fill, a bunch of flags. I don't typically light like that. A lot of my stuff is 1 or 2 lights, and I try to keep it simple whenever I can. So yeah, I'm all for simplicity.
Yeah.
So now that you said that, we don't really plan to talk about this. Let's talk like gear. Like, is a lot of your stuff like self-owned, or do you guys like hire people specifically who have gear, rent? What does that look like to like put all the pieces of the puzzle together?
Yeah, I mean, that's like one of the most difficult things about working in this industry, right? Is like the gear, and I don't know. I came from a very DIY mentality. Like, I do have access to better gear than I ever have before, but I don't think that really matters. And I think at a certain point, all people who get to a certain point sort of look back longingly on the days where they could just go with a camera and film something by themselves. I mean, I certainly have had that feeling lately where it's like, oh man, I feel like I can't just do this by myself anymore. But getting away from your question, but really, I own a decent amount of gear now, and that's just because I want it to be readily available for like when I get gigs, so I don't have to rent things and go to UPS and FedEx all the time. But I think I own enough just to be able to do the things that I'm doing. And if I need something bigger, there's always renting it. There's a great new film rental house in Iowa, in Clear Lake, Iowa, called Renovo Media Group, and Renovo Rentals. Their name, I think, is changing soon, so who knows what their name will be when this podcast comes out. We'll update you on that. But they have like the state-of-the-art gear that if, we get budgets where we can rent a good camera or a good set of lenses, and we can go to them. So I basically have a package that can do anything that I would normally do, and if I need something else, then I can supplement it from a friend or from a rental house, lensrentals.com, which I love and use all the time. So I think it's important to have enough for you to be able to do what you want to do, and then like figure out if you want to go bigger. Then a lot of my gear is like, oh, we're doing this project, and then we're doing this other project. Oh, and then we're doing this other project, and we could use this for all those. And then it just makes sense to buy it because it's like I can factor it into the budget a little bit and be like, oh, I can take this much money to pay for this thing. So I try to be at least like smart about what I buy and don't just buy all the newest, highest gear.
Especially since like, I feel like we're living in the age where the playing field is very level. You have very affordable 4K and 8K cameras now, whereas like the industry standard is 1080p.
Yeah.
Come on. So with that, or like even broadcasting, or like when you get into like cinema, like the playing field is just cameras and lenses. It's tit for tat. It's like you could go this route or you could go this route. Like there's so many different options.
Yeah. And I think that's awesome.
Yeah.
I think it's great that everyone can spend a little amount of money and get a really good camera in their hands, and not, because it seems like, gatekeeping a little bit, like if you don't have money, you can't do this.
Right.
I don't like that at all. I think that these things should be more readily available, and there's great companies. For lighting, Aperture has really changed the game for people.
Yeah.
It's given people the ability to buy high-powered cinema lights that are great for a lot of different things for a fraction of the cost of the other manufacturers. And you love to see it because, I don't think anybody wants to spend all that much money on gear. I've got other things I'd rather spend it on than lights and, stuff like that. But
go ahead.
No, you go.
What's your go-to setup if you got the budget?
Oh man, that's if I got the budget. Oh, that's a dangerous question. My go-to setup when I don't have the budget is my Canon C200, Rokinon lenses, shape, and like small HD rigging gear. Handheld, I have like a Zacuto EVF that I really like to cancel everything out and just be in that little square. But Once again, I always feel like as a cinematographer, I get these good questions that I like give a non-answer first, which is like, it depends on the gig. It depends what it is. You know what I mean? Like, for instance, I did a sizzle reel, which is like an extended trailer for this project in Iowa City a few weeks ago. And it's a period piece set in like 1884. And I was like, okay, it's a period piece set in 1884. Like, that's tough. Like, what do I choose? You know? And I actually went with these really, really weird anamorphic lenses for it to sort of distort the background and sort of had some swirly bokeh in the background and to kind of stretch the image a little bit. And we did that for a couple reasons. One, because like we needed to hide some stuff, not gonna lie. Like we didn't have the budget to make Iowa City look, you know, like it was 1884. So, but also the world that this character is in is like this like really distorted like underground world that like no one is kind of who they seem. So I thought it was a good choice, and I've used them before and thought they were great. So I think that's just like an example of, I always think about things in terms of like what I want the project to feel and look like. So, but I've been loving red lately. I've been loving the red Komodo. It's a cool little camera, fun to use. I've used that a lot with Andrew Peterson AP lately. But you know, Ari Alexas are never a bad thing. Lenses for me, like I can't choose one set of lenses. I just love a lot of different lenses. I like vintage lenses more than I like more modern lenses, I think, but it changes all the time. Like I'll say something on a podcast and listen to it, and like 2 years later, I'm like, nope, not true. Changed my mind. So it always varies.
Dope.
How have you seen like the film industry change from like 2004 when you like graduated high school until now?
Oh man, it's the Wild West right now. Specifically right now is the Wild West. Who knows what's going to happen? We're in the middle of one of the biggest strikes in like 60 years. Streaming has flipped everything upside down. The bubble in streaming is bursting. The bubble on music videos is bursting. Things are really quite strange right now in the industry, and I'm not sure where it's going to go. But I'm hopeful that people always want to watch movies and TV series and connect with people through visual language of cinema. So I don't think that's going anywhere. I'd like to see a return to the theater personally. I'd like to see a more push by these studios, by these executives to get people in the theater to have that experience, because I think we're all of the age where we had those experiences. We saw those movies that, you know, gave us goosebumps in the theater, that we'll never forget those experiences. And the generations behind us, like, do they have that? Will they have that? I don't know. And I think that's kind of the most important thing, is getting people together in a room watching a movie. It's been interesting because we're kind of insulated from the industry in Iowa. Like we're kind of like independent because like one, there's not really like a huge industry here, and the larger industries don't come here that often. And when they do, it's for like a couple days and they go in and out, and they're usually pretty happy with what they find here. They're like, oh, this is cool. Like you guys know what you're doing. And they're usually pretty nice to us. So that's always cool when that happens. But really, like, Iowa's at a point where I feel like we could really embrace filmmaking as like another industry here that would be really good, and help a lot of people get jobs, growth, all these things that all these politicians always talk about wanting, you know. But there's things that have happened in the past here that may prevent that, and I don't want to get into all that, and people can research that on their own. But I'm still hopeful that what I'm seeing is the independent filmmakers are thriving in Iowa right now. So I'm seeing more and more of my friends make movies. I'm seeing more and more of my friends make feature-length movies, apply for grants, more and more people directing movies, more people doing music videos. So I feel like it's alive and well here. The greater industry, have no idea. It's kind of unknown right now. And the last thing I'll say is I've been a part of this documentary since the beginning of the year, which I can't talk about for NDA purposes, but it's been shopped around in the greater industry. And I can say right now that like no one's buying anything. Like no one's buying anything, because I think all these people realize like that run studios and the big execs, they're like, we spent so much money on streaming. Also, we're going to have to pay the writers eventually, and we're going to have to pay the actors. So I think everyone's kind of just stopped and kind of at a standstill and a pause where it's like, what are we going to do next? What are the next steps? So I'm interested to see, and I'm hopeful that somebody will make the right decision.
Yeah.
So you mentioned streaming has probably played the biggest factor into that. What about short form content? Because a lot of people would rather binge watch 10 episodes of a Netflix original in a day than go see a 2-hour movie in a theater. And I feel like that's kind of because like everything is just chopped down short form. Social media is playing a big part of that. Where do you see that like going in the future with like whether it's shows, short form content, social media affecting the film industry?
I mean, it has affected it. I don't know that we know exactly how it's affected it yet, but we're seeing the effects of it with these strikes for sure. I mean, this is a direct, consequence of streaming, I think. I would say that there's room for all of this stuff. I don't want to see streaming go away. I don't want to see social media go away. I think it's all interesting and all great forms of storytelling, but I think that we need to think about the art form of film a little bit harder and think about what I was talking about earlier with that cinema experience, the theater experience. And I think we need to revere that and we need to relish in that because that's really where community is built. We can't build, you can build community by everyone sitting in their house watching their show and then you talk about it at the coffee shop or you talk about when you see, hey, did you see the last episode? That's all well and fine, but that conversation ends pretty quickly with most shows. There's definitely shows that keep people talking. There's a lot of shows, but I think the best thing about films versus shows or short form content is a film typically doesn't end when the film ends. The film ends like out on the sidewalk or the next day when you're talking about it with someone. It just seems to me that those series conversations with the short form ends quicker. It doesn't make as a deep as an impact.
Yeah, like the adrenaline rush when the end credits hit is just like it's tangible almost. Whereas like you finish a show and it's like, and it pops up with the Netflix suggested or whatever. It's like, oh, try this, and it's just like, okay, that's over. Now what?
Yeah, you don't even get the feeling of that ending score.
Yeah.
Like you skip the credits. So you didn't even, that composer that like made that beautiful ending score, you don't even get the feeling of it because you're always skipping to the next episode. I don't do it all the time, but I always try to stay to the end of the credits. I know that sounds like a real hipster, like film guy thing to say, but like I want to hear the music. I kind of want to like read the names and see how many people were involved and see where it was filmed. And like, I don't know, someone spent time to do those credits and to make that music and to pick out the font.
Yeah, one of my favorite things is like one of my favorite things is to like find a name and see how many times it repeats.
Yeah.
Because they people in those big industries, it's like, oh yeah, you could hire someone to do multiple different things, but whenever someone is the guy to do this, they're gonna do all those things.
Yeah.
And it's gonna take time. And maybe that's why some of the cinema process is elongated because like, well, they have to work on this, but then they also have to work on this. And it's just like keeps on going and going and going. And I think that's really interesting because like it kind of is a testament that they're not so much different than you and I. It's like they're doing the same thing that we're doing, just scaled up here.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's the same thing. A short film that nobody sees is not any different than a Mission Impossible movie. Someone made it. Someone thought the story was worth telling. I'd like to see more places for short form content, like short films, like a place for that. And I feel like we as a society haven't figured out that yet. Like, where do those go? Do people have interest in watching them? I don't know. I think they do, but that's one thing that's really weird. And that's why we've always tried to, like, on a tangent, tried to keep our short films as like our learning environment. Cause there's like, you can't make money off a short film. Like,
Right.
Very few people make money off a short film.
Right.
Do you have Vimeo?
Yeah, I love Vimeo. Well, for the most part. It's like some of it's, Vimeo, if you're listening, we should talk. I have some ideas.
I got a question about post-production because you kind of mentioned when you went down the lines of things like cinematographers do. What program are you using right now for post-production? Because I feel like it's been sort of a kind of a shift between like Premiere, DaVinci. Some people going to Final Cut Pro. So
Yeah, I grew up using Vegas Video, which I
Okay.
still love Vegas Video. That was like one of my favorite programs. And then I went to Final Cut, and I think I stopped with Final Cut 7 and then moved to Premiere, and I still use Premiere. And I am learning DaVinci very slowly, but mainly for color correction, not for editing purposes, but also I might just edit in DaVinci if I know it well enough. I think most people are more open to DaVinci at this point. But then there's also like linear editing systems
Yeah.
that people like too, but I haven't used any of those. But I think DaVinci is like where people are kind of migrating towards for sure. You can just do more in color correction, and that's like one of the trends right now is color correction. I mean, color correction is so important. And like when digital first came out, people were just like, oh, here you go, you know? And now people are really understanding what you can do with a digital image. And DaVinci is far superior as far
very
as
powerful.
color correction goes. But I just know Premiere and I'm quick in Premiere. And sometimes learning new things like that, like a new program can be really daunting. You're like, you open it and you're like, oh, no.
Yeah. It's like I have a deadline to meet.
Yeah, exactly. I can't learn this new program, but the colorist that I've been working with, his name is Ben Handler. He's from Iowa City, but he lives in Connecticut now. Amazing. He's absolutely one of the best. But he uses DaVinci, and just watching him in it, and he had his wheels, and I was just like, dude, you're a wizard. This is like wizardry right now. Yeah.
What are some things that you have learned over the course of the years as a cinematographer that you would want to share to someone who's looking to get into cinematography?
That's a great question. I think about that question a lot. Just because sometimes, like, when you start something new in a creative avenue, like, you just want to ask people questions and they're not there to answer those questions. So it's important to, like, I think to send the elevator back down and have, like, good things to say to people for questions like this. And one of the things I always think about is that this is a lifelong pursuit. Like, this isn't something that like you're going to learn in a year. It's not something you're going to learn in 5 years and 10 years and 20 years. And it's not about being satisfied with your level of learning. It's just like falling in love with that learning and falling in love with that curiosity and never losing that curiosity. Like, I am a little kid sometimes, like I'll just like wander off and look at something because I see, like, you know, the dapple of the light acting in a way in this backyard at a party, and people will just be like, yeah, he's weird, you know? And like, I just remember how I used to act as a kid, and like how I used to get so enthralled by like fireflies or, you know, whatever. And just like taking some time to really like live in the world and understand the beauty and like the connection of not only nature, but like other human beings. And like, I don't know, don't rush into it, you know, like live your life a little bit too. That's the thing, is like, I wonder how much all that time in my 20s where I was rollerblading and playing hockey and traveling around the U.S. influenced how I do this job. And it probably had a huge influence. So main takeaways are just like, be prepared for a lifelong learning pursuit, fall in love with that process. Like, the process can get you down, but if you love it, it will never get you down. Like, if you just approach it like this is something that you want to do every day, then it's hard to get angry. It's hard to get down because you just know that you're always working at it, and there's really no end goal. Like, what's an end goal? Like an Oscar for best cinematography? I can tell you right now that if you make that end goal, you are not going to be satisfied by it. So what's the point of having an end goal? Just make it an infinite goal. You're always working. You're always trying to get better. There's no end goal.
That's good stuff.
That's really good stuff.
Dang.
1% better every day.
Yep.
Couple more questions for you. So, oh man, I kind of forgot. I had a really good question for you. Shoot, it might come back to me.
I got a question for you. So is there one person, director or film that like you wish you could have worked with or worked on that you've seen? And it could be from the indie level to big production.
That's a great question too. I mean, I would love to see specifically how the Coen brothers work. And a film that I would love to have been a fly on the wall for would be No Country for Old Men.
That's a good movie.
That's definitely one of my favorites. And just hearing stories about them and how strange they are, and like, I don't know, there's just great stories from that film, and you don't know how many of them are true. But like, one is that Josh Brolin, who's like, some will say he's the main character. That's debatable who the main character is in this movie, but he like sent them an audition tape for Shagir, like the villain, and they watched it and they just replied with, "Who lit it?" They just asked who lit the thing, and they didn't. He was like sending them an audition tape for this like really important role, and he's excited, and all they ask is like, "Who lit it?" And then months go by, and they offer him the role of Llewellyn Moss, and he's just like, "But I auditioned for," it was just like, they just know. They're just like, I would love to see those guys work, and like the combination of like the Coen brothers with Roger Deakins would like make my brain explode probably, because Deakins is like the technician. He's like the guy that can like call out exposure to the fourth of a stop. He's just like always right. Every decision he makes, it never changes apparently. Like one quick story is I worked with a grip that worked on Fargo. And so he was like on a scout on this hillside in Duluth, Minnesota. There's a scene that takes place on this hillside in Fargo, and Deakins is there, and there's a guy standing by Deakins with a mallet and a stake, and a guy like 25 yards away with a mallet and a stake. And Deakins is like, "All right, we're going to go on the 35, 20 feet of dolly track here." And you just see these guys like hit stakes into the ground, and they come back later and nothing changes. The dolly track is exactly where he said, like, that was the shot, and he was right. There was no changes. It was the 35 millimeter. The dolly track went 25 feet from this place to that place, and he just knows. Like,
That's crazy.
So I would love to see someone like of that caliber work, where they just like, they always just know what they want, and they're always pretty much right.
It always
That'd be
works.
amazing. Yeah.
I remembered my question. I wrote it down so I wouldn't forget it again. But if you weren't pursuing cinematography and filmmaking, you mentioned you played like hockey. Is there anything else that you would want to pursue in life?
Well, I hope to still pursue some of these things. Like as much as I love film, like later in life, I'd want to do other things as well. And coaching hockey is definitely one of them. I feel like with filmmaking, like you don't get to see your impact that quickly with film. Sometimes like you're waiting, like I said, like a couple years to see your impact, and sometimes you don't even hear about the impact. But like I need to make an impact in my community in a more macro fashion at some point, and sports had a special place in my upbringing and making me who I am today. And I think I have a strong love for sports, and I think they are very important in providing structure and opportunities for a lot of people in this country. So I would love to be a hockey coach, and I would love to go as far as that takes me. I think that, it sounds somewhat egotistical, but I know I'd be a good hockey coach, and I know I could coach at any level. So I don't know. I already touched the Stanley Cup once, and you're not supposed to touch it until you win it. So I don't think, I think I cursed myself for that. So that's probably too lofty, but I would love to coach high school, like start there, like to be like, this is a lofty goal because I don't even have like my USA hockey certification for this, but to coach like the Des Moines Capitals would be pretty cool, or the Des Moines Oakleys would be pretty cool, because high school is such a formative time, and like I would love to be a positive role model in the lives of those kids, because I think that's a really important time to have positive role models.
That's what's up.
That's awesome.
I have one more. Is there anything specific that that like you want to get better at in filmmaking?
Yeah, everything. I'd like to get better at everything all the time. It's such a cheap answer. I've been giving you guys cheap answers all night, but specifically lighting, communication. As a director of photography, communication is really important. You got to talk to a lot of people, and you got to be quick. You got to be able to give them your vision quickly and succinct, but also like cohesive and vibrant fashion. So I think I'm always trying to be a better communicator. Like that's one of my goals. Every time I leave set, I sort of go through the day and like, hey, could I have said this better? Could I have communicated better with this person? Because it's so much about communication and those interpersonal relationships. But lighting is something that I want to study forever. And I study it like every day. TV and commercials are like ruined for me now because I'm just like, I wonder where the key light's coming from this way and they have a nice hair light there. And I just like break everything apart all the time. But I know something's really good if I don't think about that stuff too. Then I'm like, oh, I'm watching something good because I'm not thinking about it. But another thing I want to get better at is just, I want to be able to tell stories like on whatever level that they need to be told. So I'd like to get better at working on those larger sets with the larger lighting fixtures, larger crews, and let people do more for me and have for me to do less. That sounds weird, but like really like put trust in people to be able to do their best work and to be a part of the team and pull their weight. And that's something that like it's hard to do sometimes, to give up control, but there's so many talented people that work in film that I really want to like relinquish that and work with those people. And so networking, also getting better and finding those people who are the best costume designers, the best production designers. That's something that I'm always trying to get better at too, which takes a lot of time, scouring the internet, looking up who did what on these projects you like and tracking down their Insta,
Yeah. Who are some of those people that we could potentially have on the podcast at some point?
Oh, man.
Any recommendations?
Yeah, I mean, Hannah Rosalie Wright would be a great guest. I did the Daughters trilogy with her that she got a Greenlight grant for. That's a series of 3 films that she wrote and directed. She's really phenomenal. She has such a voice already in her scripts that's so strong that it's kind of like, I don't know. The first time I read the scripts, I was just like blown away by the voice that she has and that she's found already. Spencer Smith is another person who I work with a lot, who's an up and coming director. He's got a documentary project that he's working on, a couple of short film projects. There's so many great people in Iowa that sometimes I get put on the spot and I'm like, oh, I don't know. My buddy Emil Laska, he is out of Burlington. And he's just like the king of like self-starting DIY, making it happen just like with sheer will and work. And him and his group are getting really, a lot better at what they're doing, telling stories in really interesting ways. So I'd recommend him as well. Antoinette Laval would be another person who she wrote, directed, and starred in a feature film they made last summer called Peck that AP will probably talk about because I think he's editing it.
Okay.
There's so many good people. I mean, you could just start with them and then they'll tell you like 10 more people to have on. I mean, that's the cool thing is like what I said earlier, like the independent filmmakers of Central Iowa and Iowa as a whole there's a lot of them. They're coming out of the woodwork right now and everybody's doing some really cool stuff.
Yeah. Do you have like a dream director or like crew that you want to work with, or like a dream project or a dream destination you want to shoot at? Dream actor or actress?
Yeah, I thought about this question too. This one's hard. But there's someone I keep coming back to. Like, I really like to work with Ethan Hawke or Michael Shannon. I think they're amazing creators and actors, and Ethan's a really great director in his own right. I think also there's a project that I've always wanted to make that's this Cormac McCarthy novel that's actually, it's like so brutal and be like the most brutal Western ever made, but someone just bought the rights to it. That one's called Blood Meridian or An Evening Redness in the West, and it's like absolutely brutal. It's one of the most brutal books I've ever read, but it would be an amazing Western and like also true to what Westerns were, because I don't think anyone's been honest about what that was yet in film, because it's not your John Wayne movie or whatever. It's not, there's some truth to those movies, but I don't think anyone's actually depicted what the Wild West was like, which was absolutely brutal and expansion westward. So that's something that's always appealed to me, because I think it was like, it's just a good mirror to society to like be like, remind us like, hey, we're not as civilized as we think we are. And like, we still do these things. Like we still treat each other this way. And sometimes like, I don't know, seeing it makes it real, but also those movies can be hard to watch. Also, I watched like this war movie that people say is like one of the most realistic war movies last year, and will never leave
What was it?
Come and See. It is absolutely brutal. It is one of the most brutal. I think it's the most effective anti-war movie ever made. Put it that way. Yeah, absolutely brutal. But yeah, Blood Meridian would be a dream project. Michael Shannon, Ethan Hawke.
Dope.
Yeah,
Cool. I think that's it, right?
Yeah.
Cool.
cool.
We end every episode just going around the table, talking about something that has inspired us recently, whether it was like this past month or this week or like today. So we let our guests go last. That way you can have some time to think. But who wants to kick it off?
I'll go.
This is what inspired me this week is
Prime Day. This came across my feed. A $50 T1.4 35 millimeter lens
Sick.
for $50.
Wow.
I was like,
T14.
yeah.
That's
I was
awesome.
like, it's $50. So I got it with a RF mount and just went and shot some stuff on Saturday. And it's got really interesting bokeh to it. Really interesting. Like it's very light. Go ahead. I mean, it's like literally like a paperweight. You know, it's itty bitty. I was like, no harm done. So threw a black mist filter on it, and I was just like, let's go shoot some stuff. It was fun. It kind of was like it reminded me that like it doesn't really matter the tool. It just doesn't. You know, you can get like the playing field is level. You can shoot with your phone, with a camera, with, you know, a very vintage camera, whatever look you're going for, you can accomplish it with a variety of means. And so it just kind of like sparked some creativity because I was like, it's $50 and I'm gonna see what I can actually like kind of push the limits with it in a sense, you know, because it's not anything that I would recommend be like, oh, buy this lens to use on a project. But if I'm going to go to the farmer's market, I'm going to slap it on my body and go shoot some video.
Yeah.
So it was fun.
Yeah,
That's great.
That's dope. It's kind of cute, bro.
It is. It's adorable. It is.
Yeah.
So tiny.
It is.
Yeah. Marquis, you got something?
Yeah, I'll go ahead. So I went to Utah like 3 or 4 weeks ago, I think. And I didn't take my camera. I didn't take a film camera. I didn't take my mirrorless camera or anything, but I shot a lot of pictures on my phone. I finally got a chance to sit down and edit. And like you said, the playing field is very, very even. It was my first time really sitting down, like actually editing a photo off the iPhone. So it was pretty interesting. And they came out pretty dope because that's where my background is kind of from. I started with landscape photography. So yeah, people will be seeing those here shortly as I post them throughout the rest of the summer on social media. So
That's what's up, bro. The person that has inspired me recently is a multimedia designer and illustrator named Rachel Ritwidge. I believe is how you pronounce her last name, but she's been doing some like tour graphics and merch design and like just different designs for a band that I like called Laney. And I think she recently just did like kind of all the designs for their latest single called like Alonica or whatever. Super cool, like very abstract style and very colorful, which is something that like I don't do a lot of as a graphic designer or anything like that, but it's something that I want to eventually get into. So like looking at her for inspo has been something I've been doing recently. So yeah.
Nice. This is a good segue for you guys. I've been inspired lately by two people who have decided to really like take a step away from a job that wasn't making them happy and go out and try their own thing. One of them is Andrew Peterson, AP. Having him work with us lately has been a huge inspiration, just like a huge shot in the arm. Just proud of him for making those decisions too, to do what makes him happy. And also my girlfriend for doing the same thing, leaving a job that she didn't like, starting her own business. And I just like have so much respect, and I'm so inspired by people that make those decisions because it's tough. You know, it's tough to go out on your own and leave a solid financial situation to try something creative. So when people do it, I really try to be a champion of them. And anytime I get down on myself or kind of frustrated, I just think about the mentality that those people tend to have, which is just like that curious, like, ready to go attitude because it's so new to them. And I just always like being around people that keep it fresh, keep that freshness, that creativity alive.
Yeah, that's dope. Cool. Well, that was another episode of the Creatives POV podcast, and we'll catch y'all next time.